The Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privilege of the floor will please retire to the gallery. The senators and all in attendance will stand and be led in prayer by President Fred Mullins of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Richmond, Virginia. Following the prayer, everyone will remain standing and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States by Senate Page Casey Thomas.
Good morning, brothers, sisters. Good to be here with you. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we offer our gratitude for the blessings that we have received. We thank Thee for the freedoms we have in this country and our Commonwealth. May the senators here preserve these freedoms for our posterity. May we be humble and recognize that distinction does not come through worldly strength, power, or position. It comes through humility. Bless us to be humble. Please bless the senators as mothers and fathers, wives and husbands, that they can be nurturing and loving in their families, that we will remember the importance and impact that the home has in our society, that no other success can compensate for failure at home, and the greatest work that we will do is within the walls of our own homes. Sustain the senators to be thoughtful and inspired in the weighty and monumental decisions they will make. Bless each senator to be polite and courteous. May this Senate chamber be a place of kindness, patience, respect, and civility. I ask Thee, Father, to bless the women and men of this Senate. Give them strength to perform their immense responsibilities with dignity and love for their fellow man. Bless this chamber, that it'll be a place of inspiration, peace, and harmony. And I ask for these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk will call the roll. All those in attendance will please record their vote aye. Clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. President. Senate Journal for Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The senior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase, moves that the reading of the journal be waived. All in favor of waiving the reading of the journal will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 34, noes 5.
Ayes 34, noes 5. The reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will report any communication from the House of Delegates. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move we waive the reading of the communications from the House of Delegates.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 32, noes 5.
Ayes 32, noes 5. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived. The clerk will report any communication from the governor.
We do not have any, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now comes a time in the morning hour where we have the honor and the privilege of welcoming our distinguished guests with us here in the Senate gallery. I will give my usual reminder that the way this will proceed is that a senator will stand up and recognize an individual or a group. I will then offer the warm welcome of the Senate, and at the very end, we will all applaud together. I would like to begin by calling on the senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D-Step.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, today our prayer was given by Fred Mullins. Fred is the first temple, was given today by, I apologize, Fred Mullins. He's the president of the Richmond Stake, which is the organization equivalent to the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And he is a constituent of my seatmate, and they've been a longtime friends, and he's been preaching there for decades, a lot of decades, according to this. But with that, he gave an eloquent message this morning. We'd like to thank him for that and give him the warmest welcome of the Senate. Thank you.
Thank the Senator. Would President Fred and Mrs. Mullins please rise in the gallery if you are able? President Mullins, thank you so much for that really beautiful prayer. We're grateful to you for your moral leadership here in Richmond and throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. And thank you for that wonderful message for all of our families. We really appreciate you. Mrs. Mullins, thank you for all that you do. We appreciate you. You're welcome back here anytime. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate, the President, and Mrs. Fred Mullins. Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise for the purpose of an introduction.
Thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joining us in the gallery this morning is one of our session's legislative fellows with my office, Brian Zuluaga. Brian's a senior public policy and leadership major at the University of Virginia and a native of Perkasie, Pennsylvania. He's the founder and president of the Baton Latinx Network organization on the grounds. He's program director for Bridging the Gap, a child refugee mentor program in Charlottesville, and a peer mentor to Hispanic and Latinx students on his campus. He does all this while maintaining a 3.37 GPA and commuting to Richmond during the week to be with us. Brian's an incredibly gifted young man and has been such an important part of my office this year. And Mr. President, we're sad to see him go, but we know that he's on to great things in the future. And Mr. President, I ask you provide Brian with a warm welcome to the Senate.
I thank the Senator. Would our friend Brian Zuluaga please rise in the gallery if you are able? Brian, thank you so much for being here today, and also thank you for your tremendous work in this legislative session. I know that Senator McPike is very grateful for your work, and so are all 8.5 million Virginians, that you would dedicate your time to making us better. And thanks for all you do for our children at UVA, a great institution, and we wish you nothing but success in the future. I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our distinguished guests. Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. President. The boss was giving me some direction for that.
I waited until she was done with it. Right?
Thank you. We all know she is the boss, Mr. President. Mr. President, rise for the purposes of announcement.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, or introduction. Mr. President, in the gallery, we have a group from a homeschool class led by their teacher, Lee Ann Arnett. Mr. President, in the group is Heather Williamson, who is the mother of Temple Williamson, Gabrielle Drury, Aiden Drury, and Afton Lax. If they are here to watch as we debate a lot of legislation on our very thick calendar today. And Mr. President, if you could offer them the warm welcome of the Senate as they watch government in action.
I thank the Senator. Will the homeschool class of Lee Ann Arnett please rise in the gallery if you are able? Thank you all so much for being here today in your capital and in your Senate of Virginia. We are grateful that you took the time to be here and also to witness your government in action. And I hope we make you proud by the work that we're doing all together. And so you're always welcome here. We wish you nothing but success in your lives. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our distinguished guests. The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for two introductions.
I thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as so often is the case, some of the most important people that help make our lives so much better on a daily basis go unnoticed. Such is the case with the first two individuals I'd like to recognize. Ladies and gentlemen of this body, every day we are treated to superb meals in this chamber. I say the following with a bit of trepidation. The meals that we eat here every day are as good as I eat anywhere. And my wife is a good cook, and I know tonight I'm going to go home and she's going to put a can of tuna fish on my plate and say, have at it. But Richard, Carl, and Donald Houston every day prepare our meals. They did not look for recognition, but I want to recognize them and introduce them to the body for the outstanding service that they provide us every day. So, Mr. President, if we could recognize Richard, Carl, and Donald Houston for the superb service and care that they give us each day, and we'll give them a warm Virginia State Senate welcome.
I thank the senator. Would our friends and leaders, Richard, Carl, and Donald Houston, please rise in the gallery if you are able? Yeah, they definitely deserve that too, but you'll get another one. Richard and Donald, thank you all so much for your tremendous work here in the Senate of Virginia. You really are a huge part of this family. We are all deeply grateful to both of you. And what people don't know is that in addition to Senator Morrissey's eloquent explanation of the work that you do here, is that you are just two extraordinary people, and we've got to know you and your families, and you have hearts of gold, and you love everyone, and you treat everyone with the highest respect. So this Senate would not work without you. All 8.5 million Virginians are better off because you have dedicated yourselves to the work here in the Senate. So we thank you, we honor you, and I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friends Richard, Carl, and Donald Houston. These senators do not want to go hungry, I can assure you of that. Thank you all so much. You're extraordinary people. Junior Senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd also like to recognize a second group of individuals. I'm sure the body understands and recognizes that every morning when we come in here, these chambers are pristine. They are cleaned. And joining us today in the staff are 3 of the people from the day crew. I don't know if you know this, but every day when we leave, they come in and they do a cleaning, and then there's a night crew that does a cleaning. And I would like to recognize that group of people that come in here every day and clean this chamber, and they do it in superb fashion. They've never asked for any recognition, but we owe it to them. So, Mr. President, I'd like to recognize Dwight Drew, Princess Fisher, and David Lewis for the superb work that they do keeping our home clean every day. And there is also a cadre of 5 individuals who come in the night shift who are not here today, but I would like to recognize them as well. And if you could give a warm Virginia State Senate welcome to those people that take care of our home away from home, I would be grateful, Mr. President.
I thank the senator. Would our friends and leaders, Dwight Drew, Princess Fisher, and David Lewis, please rise in the gallery if you are able. Dwight, Princess, and David, thank you all so much for your extraordinary leadership and your work. You really are amazing people, and you do, as the senator from Richmond City so eloquently stated, keep this historic place pristinely clean, but you also lift up everyone's spirits. You are wonderful people, and again, we've also got to know your families, and you're part of this family. I know they are deeply proud of each one of you and the work that you do to lift up 8.5 million Virginians. So thank you for your work. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your lives. You are wonderful people, and I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our distinguished guests. Senator from Loudoun, Senator Bell.
Good morning, Mr. President. I rise for 2 introductions.
Good morning, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. First introduction, joining us in the gallery is Peter DeLiso and Wendy Sharon. They represent the 868 Estate Vineyards in Loudoun County. As you may know, we have a growing winery community in Loudoun County, many fine wineries made there. In fact, this is one of the best. They won the 2020 Virginia's Governor's Cup for their 2017 Vidal Blanc Pasito, which was selected out of more than 530 wines. The Pasito is the first wine made from 100% Loudoun County fruit to win the award, and it's the first time in 15 years that a dessert wine has won the Governor's Cup. Governor Northam congratulated them and said to the team at 868, it was a sweet finish, a reflection of our world-class wine industry. Mr. President, with that, I ask that you please give them a warm Virginia Senate welcome.
I thank the Senator. Would Peter DeLiso and Wendy Sharon please rise to the gallery if you are able? Peter and Wendy, thank you so much for being here today, for visiting your Senate and your Capitol, and also thank you for representing Virginia and Loudoun County so extraordinarily well. You make us proud, not just in the country but around the world, for your accomplishments, and you're lifting up our wine industry, which, as the Senator so eloquently stated, is growing here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and it's because we have great entrepreneurs and dedicated citizens like the two of you. So keep up the great work. Bring samples the next time you're here, and I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to Peter DeLiso and Wendy Sharon. Senator from Loudoun, Senator Bell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to introduce the Links Incorporated, which is the Old Dominion chapter of the Links. It's a volunteer service organization of concerned, committed, and talented women who link in a friendship, enhance the quality of life of the larger community. This organization is primarily concerned with enriching, sustaining, and ensuring the identities, culture, and economic survival of African Americans and persons of African descent. To contribute to the formation of a positive, productive, and culturally diverse society, the Links Incorporated also focuses on education, cultural enrichment, health and wellness, civic involvement. This focus is implemented through strategies such as public information and education, economic development, public policy. Mr. President, this is a group that's committed to working with others to make our Commonwealth a better place for everyone, a place that's inviting, a place that's knowledgeable, and is definitely respectful to culture and all histories. With that, Mr. President, I ask that you give them a warm Virginia Senate welcome.
I thank the Senator. Would our friends and leaders from the Old Dominion chapter of the Links Incorporated please rise in the gallery if you are able? Thank you all so much for joining us here today in your Senate and in your Capitol, and we echo the eloquent and generous words of the Senator from Loudoun, Senator Bell. You are an extraordinary group of leaders and women who lift up people, not just in the Commonwealth, not just in this country, but really around the world. The Links is the premier organization for African-American women and supporting families and communities, creating opportunity for education and economic development. Whenever we see that green coming through these chambers, we know something special and wonderful is going to happen. So you're welcome here anytime. We honor your tremendous commitment and your service, and we appreciate all that you do to make the Commonwealth of Virginia a better place to live. I would ask everyone to please join me in sending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our distinguished leaders from the Old Dominion chapter of the Links Incorporated. And I should note that two of our distinguished senators here, Senator Louise Lucas and Senator Mamie Locke, are proud members of the Links Incorporated. So they are very proud of you as well. The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, we're joined in the gallery today by some people who were just a major help in helping me and Janet, my legislative aide, Janet Muldoon, get through the session. Andrew Dolan came on board in November. He's from Falls Church and just been a huge help over the last several months to Janet and myself. And also joining in the gallery today are three, and if Governor McAuliffe was here, he would say the greatest interns of all time. Emma Boaz, Jack Connolly, and Mallory Peretti Mahedi is here, and I would hope that you would wish that you would extend them the warmest wishes of the Senate. They did a great job.
Thank the senator. Would Emma Boaz, Jack Conley, Andrew Dolan, and Mallory Paredi Mahidi please rise in the gallery if you are able? Thank you all so much for the work you've done in this legislative session to support the work of the senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw. I know that he is very grateful. Janet Muldoon is wonderful. Chief of Staff also, I'm sure, very appreciative of your work, but so are we all. This place works better when we have brilliant, dedicated, committed people who are willing to sacrifice their time and their energy and their intelligence to make us better and to help us work more efficiently. So we appreciate you. We thank you for all that you've done. You're welcome back here anytime as a part of this family. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our 4 distinguished guests. The senior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for the purpose of 2 introductions.
Thank the senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today in the gallery, I have 2 very special guests who are both veterans who have served our country. I'd first like to recognize Mr. Bob Cooney of Fredericksburg, who has more than 20 years experience in the Navy and Missile Defense Agency acquisition community as a government civilian contractor. He sustained superior performance, has been formally documented through many commendations and awards received from Commander Naval Air Forces, U.S. Atlantic Fleet, Commander Fleet Forces Command, Commander Naval Sea Systems Command, Program Executive Officer, aircraft carriers, and the list goes on, Mr. President. And so I would ask, in addition to recognizing Mr. Bob Cooney, that we also recognize one of our more recent veterans, and that would be Lance Allen, who is actually shadowing me today. He wants to know exactly what we do here in the Senate, and so he has been brave enough to tag along with me today and got here at 4:30 this morning, I might add. He's from Warrenton County. He's a 10-year U.S. Air Force veteran, intelligence operator, and is a subject matter expert on counter-narcotics and counterterrorism, specifically as they apply to homeland defense. Mr. President, if you could do the fine job of offering our 2 wonderful veterans the warm welcome of the Senate. Thank you.
I thank the senator. Would Bob Cooney and Lance Allen please rise in the gallery if you're able? Bob and Lance, thank you all so much for joining us here today in your Senate, in your Capitol. We echo the eloquent and generous words of the senior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase, and we're deeply appreciative to both of you for your service to our country and for all you do to keep us safe and to make us better. So thank you for your commitment, your dedication, and your loyalty to this nation. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our 2 distinguished guests. Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko.
Good morning, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
Morning, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I know that we all have folks who are helping us throughout this session make all the things work for us. We're not by ourselves. And I wanted to introduce you to my intern, whose name is Claire Puyak. She is a University of Richmond student. She's going to be graduating next year with a major in political science and journalism. Claire has been really helpful with helping draft statements, making sure that I'm prepared when I'm going to make my votes. She's done all kinds of great stuff, and she has gotten to learn how we make this all work. And I'm looking forward to seeing what she has in store for her in the future, and I ask you, Mr. President, to give her the warmest welcome. Thanks.
I thank the senator. Would Claire Puyak please rise in the gallery if you are able? Claire, thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you for your tremendous work throughout this legislative session. And we echo the generous and eloquent words of Senator Boysko, who I know is very appreciative of all that you've done to help her office and to help all Virginians. And I'll let you know that when she mentioned that you were at the University of Richmond, Madam Clerk applauded. So she is a very big fan of Richmond and of you. And so we thank you. You're welcome back here anytime as a member of this family. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friend Claire Puyak.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise for purposes of an introduction.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joining us today is a young, energetic, and very bright young boy who is related to my esteemed seatmate. I'd like the body to recognize Johnny Morrissey, who is the nephew of Senator Joe Morrissey, and Johnny Morrissey's mom, Yvonne Stevenson Morrissey. Johnny is with the Merit School of Prince William. His school came to visit the Capitol a few weeks ago. He toured Capitol Square and was taken in by the allure of lawmaking. He's very excited to be here. He wants to learn more. He's interested in becoming a page. And Mr. President, I believe he'll be an excellent page, and I'm sure he has a very bright future. I hope it is the will of the Senate to give Johnny Morrissey and his mother, Yvonne Stevenson Morrissey, a warm, warm welcome. Thank you.
I thank the Senator. Would Johnny Morrissey and Yvonne Stevenson Morrissey please rise in the gallery if you're able? Hey, Johnny. It's going to be a good day. It's so wonderful to see you. And Johnny and Yvonne, thank you all so much for joining us here today. You're always welcome here in the Senate and in the Capitol. And I know in particular, Senator Morrissey is very excited to see you both. He's a wonderful person, and I know he loves his family very dearly. And so that includes the both of you. So we appreciate all that you do to make his service possible and all that your family contributes to the Commonwealth of Virginia. I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our buddy Johnny Morrissey and Yvonne Stevenson Morrissey. Do any other senators wish to be recognized for purposes of an introduction? Is there any other business to come in the morning hour? Seeing none, Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Mr. President, I now move that we stand in recess until 10:50.
Thanks, Senator. Without objection, the Senate will stand in recess until 10:50. Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privilege of the floor will please retire to the gallery. The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend the rules and grant the privileges of the floor to a former Senate member.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the privileges of the floor be granted to a distinguished former senator? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The rules are suspended. The privileges of the floor are granted. The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, we're joined here today by former member Elmo Cross from out in the Hanover area. He was here, I think, from the mid-70s to the mid-90s, did a fabulous job, and was one of the most well-liked members of this chamber. And I would ask that you extend the privileges, issue a warm welcome to our former member and colleague.
Senator Cross, we are honored to have you back. Please greet Senator Cross, everyone. The clerk will call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Wednesday, March the 4th, 2020. Page 6. Bills in conference. Conference Committee report on House Bill 405.
Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko. We're on page 6, House Bill 405, and this is the Conference Committee report.
Yes, Mr. President. I move we accept the Committee of Conference.
Senator, want to speak briefly to that?
Speaking to it.
Senator's floor.
This is dealing with menstrual supplies being put into the schools. After consultation with some of the school systems, they asked that for elementary schools, we, instead of requesting that they go in every bathroom, have an agreed upon location where the students can serve themselves, but not in every bathroom. And I move that we accept the Committee of the Conference.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the Senate adopt the Conference Committee report? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The Senate adopts the Conference Committee report.
On page 9, Conference Committee report on House Bill 795.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the Conference Committee report.
Senators, the floor.
Mr. President and members of the Senate, this measure deals with the Association Health Plan bill that I carried this year. Senator Donovan had a version of this last year. We passed it last year. It was vetoed by the governor, and I think we've addressed the types of issues that the administration had on things, both through the passage of the legislation and through this Conference Committee report now, and I'd hope it be the pleasure of the body to adopt it.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the Senate adopt the Conference Committee report? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The Senate adopts the Conference Committee report.
Turning to page 19. Conference Committee report on House Bill 1726.
This would be
Central Law.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, could we pass that by temporarily, please, sir?
Without objection, House Bill 1726 will go by temporarily.
Page 22. Conference Committee report on Senate Bill 232.
Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko.
Mr. President, thank you very much. This is identical to the bill that we just discussed a second ago, dealing with menstrual supplies in schools. Again, elementary schools will have one designated location for the supplies. The high school and middle schools will have them in the bathrooms. And I move that the conference report be accepted.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the Senate adopt the Conference Committee report? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The Senate adopts the Conference Committee report.
Conference Committee report on Senate Bill 235.
Mr. President.
Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I move the Conference Committee report be agreed to. Mr.
Senators, the floor.
This is the same bill we just passed, and as it relates to association health plans, the senator from Southern Fairfax has done a great job getting us all together. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the Senate adopt the Conference Committee report? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The Senate adopts the Conference Committee report.
Page 25. Conference Committee report on Senate Bill 481.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I ask that we adopt the Conference Committee report and speaking to the measure.
There is the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. What the Conference Committee report does is it corrects two issues that had been that had been identified as concerns by some stakeholders. The Conference Committee report clearly identifies that any employer who offers paid time off that meets the requirement outlined in the paid sick day section, which is a full-time employee would earn a minimum of 40 hours of paid time off. So that would be 5 days. And this would apply to any employers with 15 employees or more. But the way we worded the paid time off section of the bill in the conference report takes care of a lot of accounting issues that members in the business community felt were problematic. And it just sets the floor. You meet these you offer these 5 paid days to be used for sick day purposes or just paid time off, and that's fine. You meet the requirement of the bill. And the second thing the conference report does is we did have a section in there that ensured an employee could not be retaliated against if they took 2 days of sick time and did not report that to the employer. That section had applied to all employers. We narrowed it to applying to those employers with 15 employees or more. So the bill is about 90% perfect. It is not 100%. A lot of issues still need to be tickled out through regulation. We have continued to meet with stakeholders from industry, from organized labor, from advocacy groups, and we think this is the absolute best product we can send to the governor. Having said that, I do hope it is the pleasure of the body to adopt the conference committee report. It is incredibly important that our low-wage earners who are not in a position to negotiate for paid sick days have the opportunity to take paid sick days when they are sick so they don't come to work and infect everybody else. And I have cited when I've made presentations before our various committees that there are studies out showing children who are delayed in getting their vaccines and are not going to a doctor when they're sick is primarily because their parents don't have the opportunity to take paid time off to care for a child, and this bill covers that. It would cover workers who cook our food and restaurant workers. It would cover those who actually provide personal care services to our loved ones. I do hope it is, again, it is in the will of the body to pass this report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is Senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in emphatic opposition to adopting the conference committee report.
Senator, it's the floor.
Many times during the discussions this session, I have heard the term equity applied to many different bills in many different forms, and I appreciate the articulation by the general lady about demonstrating compassion to some of our lower compensated employees. But let me point out a couple of salient points to you. And I would, with all due respect, say I do not believe that this conference committee report is even close to being 90% there. I am confident that everyone in this body has exhaustively read this conference committee report and are aware that it applies to private as well as public employees. And when we talk about equity, I would say that this is a far more extensive sick leave policy than is applied to our state employees. State employees only begin to accrue this after 40 hours a week, not every 30 hours per week. It has further been suggested to me, based upon inquiry from the Department of Human Resource Management, and I don't know that this has been contemplated, and if it has, I would have to say it is a significant oversight. Let me share with you the agencies that would be impacted by this. And perhaps I am just in a naive mode today, and there's going to be a lockdown on it because this is a conference committee report, and it's got to be right. But we ought to at least know what we're voting for or against. It applies to the following agencies: Fort Monroe Authority, the Virginia Port Authority, the Virginia Tourism Authority, the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, the Board of Bar Examiners, the Virginia Workmen's Compensation Commission, the Virginia Corporation Commission, VRS, the Auditor of Public Accounts, JERC, the Judicial Inquiry and Review Commission, JLARC, the Division of Legislative Automated Services, the Virginia House of Delegates, the Senate, the Supreme Court, the Circuit Courts, the General District Court, the Juvenile Domestic Relations Court, and the UVA Medical Center. This is far from a perfect bill at this point, and I would suggest, ladies and gentlemen, that we still have ample time and to please reject this conference committee report and to have the conferees go back and look at this with a great sensitivity, one, to the inequity to state employees, and secondly, the pervasiveness of the impact that it's going to have. Being parochial for a moment, I have had the privilege of many years, along with others in this chamber, of serving on and participating on the Jamestown-Yorktown Foundation on it, and I would say, ladies and gentlemen, that is an agency that operates on a very thin budget where 50% of the operational costs on that agency come from gate receipts on it, and they employ a number of individuals who are right at that 20 to 30 hour per week work week. So this could have a devastating impact on that agency. So with all due respect to the work of this conference committee that I know have really put their hearts into this Senate Bill 481, I would say to my friends on the Senate conferees who are Favola, Bell, and Stewart to please take the time to revisit this.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D. Steph, rise?
Mr. President, will the gentlelady from Arlington rise for a question?
Will the Senator yield?
Yes, I will yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, if you'll ask the gentlelady, if I was a business and let's say 5 years ago, I offered for all my new employees 2 weeks vacation and 1 week sick time, and then 5 years ago I decided, hey, you know, we have a lot of people that are looking more for flexibility in their time, and some people get sick more, some people get less, that we change that to have what we call personal time off of 3 weeks a year. So instead of having 1 week sick time being dictated and 2 weeks vacation time being dictated, we didn't want employees to say, hey, I need to take sick time or take vacation when they're actually sick or vice versa. So we made it where it's 3 weeks total time off and the employee can use it at whatever their discretion is. So can she please tell me how this bill, how that would affect me?
Senator, has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would say to the senior senator from Virginia Beach that under the paid time off section, we clearly state if you meet the 40 hours per year for a full-time employee, you have met the requirements of the bill. It does not matter when they take it. It doesn't matter how you account for it. As long as those hours are there, you've met the requirement of the bill. We tried very hard to accommodate, or shall I say, we tried very hard to grant flexibility in our language so businesses can basically account for this leave any way they want to. Now, if we failed in that, then perhaps there will be a regulatory process to correct it, but it was our intent to not dictate when those days had to be taken or how you lined them up in your payroll system.
Mr. President, will the gentlelady yield for one more follow-up question?
Senator Yield.
Yes, I will yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, can you ask the gentlelady from Arlington if that employee is a part-time employee and we only offer benefits to our full-time employees, so that's a part-time employee who only works 28 or 30 hours a week, how this bill would affect that part-time employee?
Senator, the floor.
I would say to the gentleman that in this bill, if a part-time employee, for every 30 hours worked, that part-time employee would earn 1 hour of paid time off. And again, however you account for that, we don't put any time frame around it. We don't say 30 hours in 1 week or 30 hours in a month. It's for every 30 hours worked, you would earn 1 hour.
Mr. President.
Of paid time off.
Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Let's go by temporarily.
Without objection.
Okay.
Senate Bill 481 will go by temporarily.
Page 30.
Go to page 26.
Oh, sorry, page 26. We have a replacement conferees on Senate Bill 593. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Judiciary, Senator Edwards, or Senators Hanger, McClellan, and Morrissey. This is a replacement. 593, Hanger, McClellan, and Morrissey. On page 30, Conference Committee report on Senate Bill 1038.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accept the conference committee report and speaking to that, Mr. President.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, this makes a number of technical corrections and clarification. It modified the provisions that prevented use of the funds for light rail expansion to authorize its use within a locality where it currently exists. And of course, it lowers the grantor's tax rate. And it does have a kill switch in it, Mr. President. It creates a permanent regional stakeholders group to provide advice on long-term intermodal public transit planning to the Transportation Planning Organization. So with that explanation, Mr. President, I move to adopt the Conference Committee report.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate adopt the Conference Committee report? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 24, noes 16.
Ayes 24, no 16. The Senate adopts the Conference Committee report.
If you return to page 19, House Bill 1726, Conference Committee report.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas. This is page 19.
Companion bill to the one you just had.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adopt the Conference Committee report.
Senator's
and
floor.
Mr. President, it's a companion bill to the one that I just presented. So with that explanation, I move again that we adopt the Conference Committee report.
I thank the Senator. Question is, shall the Senate adopt the Conference Committee report? For what purpose is Senator from Virginia, Senior Senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D. Steph rise?
Mr. President, will the gentlelady yield for a question?
Will the Senator yield?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, I yield.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Mr. President, I hit my button last time, and I guess I didn't stand up quick enough, or I didn't hit it fast enough. But on this one, since I know it does similar things or the same thing, my question for the gentlelady, Mr. President, is the transient occupancy tax, which was stripped out by the Senate, is that back into this conference report?
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, I've read over this Conference Committee report twice, and I do not see that language re-entered into this report. And Mr. President, if he sees something different, I'd like him to direct my attention to it.
Thank the Senator. Further question?
Mr. President, I've had a little bit of a problem with my computer here. If we could take this by temporarily.
Without objection? Without objection, we will take House Bill 1726 by temporarily.
Turning to page 25, Senate Bill 481.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Mr. President, I'm going to ask that Senate Bill 481 go by for the day.
Without objection?
Thank you.
Senate Bill 481 will go by for the day.
Turning to page 31, Unfinished Business House. House Bill 1506. The House has rejected the Senate substitute.
Let's go and field this. Everyone.
Mr. President.
Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
The chairman of Education and Health spoke to me earlier, and we would ask the Senate to insist on our amendments and request a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. question is, shall the Senate insist and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate insists and requests a committee of conference.
House Bill 1526, the House has rejected. The Senate substitute with amendments.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I move that we insist on our substitute and request a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 29, noes 11.
Ayes 29, noes 11. The Senate insists and requests a committee of conference.
House Bill 2, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Judiciary. Senator Edwards are Senators Peterson, Deeds, and Obenshain. House Bill 42, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Education and Health, Senator Lucas, of Senators Barker, Newman, and McClellan. House Bill 600, the House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Judiciary, Senator Edwards, or Senators Hanger, McClellan, and Morrissey. House Bill 799, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Education and Health, Senator Lucas, or Senators McPike, Lewis, Cosgrove. House Bill 1209, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Rehabilitation and Social Services, Senator Favola, or Senators Hashmi, Boysko, and Cosgrove. House Bill 1519, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Senate Rules, Senator Locke, or Senators Locke, McClellan, and Vogel. On House Bill 1725, the House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Judiciary, Senator Edwards, or Senators Deeds, Peterson, and Chafin. We are awaiting House action on the remaining bills. On page 44, unfinished business, Senate Bill 270 that has passed the House with amendments.
Senator Loudon, Senator Bell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accept the House amendments. And speaking to the bill.
Senator, it's the floor.
Mr. President, there were some concerns brought about by the wording of the bill by the hospital groups in Virginia, and we made minor tweaks to it to address that. And I thank Delegate Hodges for his expertise in pharmacies who helped us craft those amendments. With that, I move the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 22, noes 17.
Ayes 22, no 17. The Senate concurs with the House amendments.
Senate Bill.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I apologize for interrupting the rapidity with which we're moving, but I have a very short-term memory issue. And if we could return to Moses said, "It does not get better, sir." Mr. President, if we could return to page 30, Senate Bill 1038, which is a Hampton Roads Transit funding bill, having voted on the prevailing side as a conferee, I would respectfully ask that we reconsider the vote by which we accepted that conference committee report.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the vote by which the Senate adopted the conference committee report be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
Mr.
Senator from
President.
James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, sir. I would ask we pass that bill by temporarily, sir.
Thank the Senator. Without objection, Senate Bill 1038 will go by temporarily.
Returning to page 45, Senate Bill 440. Senate Bill 441 has passed the House with a substitute.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adopt the House amendments substitute. And speaking to that motion,
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, this just their language is basically clarified what this bill does, but this bill basically makes it more economically feasible to have a micro winery, which is basically wineries which buy their juice from other places and they make their wine on site. I have one of these in my district that does it in a little shopping center. There's another one down in Virginia Beach, and under current law, they weren't allowed to sell glasses of wine in their store or sell their bottles of wine. Anyway, this makes it so they can sell a glass of wine in their store, and it's the same policy already passed. I would move we adopt it.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs with the House substitute.
Senate Bill 629 has passed the House with a substitute.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the recommendation that we reject the House amendments, I move that we adopt the House amendments. This bill just needs a little more. Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to that motion, this bill just needs a little bit more work. The other version of it from the House we've already put in conference, and so we just need to do the same thing with this one.
Thank the Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 0, noes 40.
Ayes 0, noes 40. The Senate does not concur with the House substitute.
Senate Bill 712 has passed the House with a substitute.
Senior Senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accept the House amendments substitute. Speaking of that,
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The House substitute just made some technical changes that now conform this to the version that passed the House earlier this week.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson rise?
Gentlelady yield for a question.
Will Senator yield?
Yes.
Senator Yields, you have the floor.
I would ask the gentlelady that in committee we had made some changes to the remedies that were available under this statute and whether or not that's been changed.
Senator's the floor.
On the original Senate bill,
yes,
no,
ma'am.
they have not been. The only changes are technical.
Thank you.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. The Senate concurs with the House substitute.
Senate Bill 888 has passed the House with amendments.
Senior Senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Yes. This one, unfortunately, we need to reject the amendments. They changed the number of members from each body, so we got to put this in conference.
Thank the Senator. With the recommendation that they be rejected, the question is, shall the Senate adopt the House amendments? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 1, noes 39.
Ayes 1, noes 39. The Senate does not concur with the House amendments.
Senate Bill 905 has passed the House with a substitute.
Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the recommendation that we reject the House substitute, I now move that we concur with the House substitute. And speaking to that motion,
Senator, has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 905, if you do recall, of course, passed out of here 39-0. It was a remedy of repair where a tenant, if that tenant had a serious damage to their leased premises and they gave notice to the landlord and the landlord within a certain time did not fix the problem, then the tenant could fix the problem themselves and then deduct that from their rent. There was a limitation as to what level, how much of the rent, 1 month's rent, 2 months' rent, was to be permitted. Now, everybody got together, the stakeholders got together, and they made the determination of what it would have been, and that's what came out of the Senate. It went over into the House now, and they've changed in terms of how many months' rent up to the total of what can be deducted. It's not that I'm against that because they went from 1 month to 2 months, but I want to make sure that everybody's still on the same page. So I think getting into conference will make sure that everybody's okay with either what we have or we'll agree to stick by our word as originally was agreed to and revert back to the Senate original document. So for those reasons, Mr. President, I now renew my motion to concur with the House substitute with the recommendation that we reject it.
Thank the Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 0, noes 40.
Ayes 0, noes 40. The Senate does not concur with the House substitute.
Senate Bill 957 has passed the House with a substitute.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. With a recommendation that we reject the House substitute, I would move that the House substitute be accepted. The only difference here is Mr. President, is we have 3 House members and 2 senators, so we just need to get that into conference. So I move with a recommendation that we reject the House substitute. I move the House substitute.
Thank the Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 2, noes 37.
Ayes 2, noes 37. The Senate does not concur with the House substitute.
Senate Bill 994 has passed the House with amendment.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman. This is Senate Bill 994.
I apologize, Mr. President. I'm trying to walk and chew gum here. Mr. President and ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I am respectfully requesting that we reject the amendment by the House of Delegates. This started out as merely a recodification of the mission statement of Virginia Military Institute. It was reviewed by the Attorney General's Office and Council and the Board of Trustees at VMI. The reason I'm requesting to reject the amendment that was offered by the House is that at VMI right now we only have a single sanction, and the single sanction applies to all of these issues that are addressed in here, whether they're drugs or alcohol. So I would ask that we reject the House amendment.
Thank the Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 0, noes 40.
Ayes 0, noes 40. The Senate does not concur with the House amendment.
Senate Bill 1051 is passed the House with a substitute.
Senator from Bath, Senator Dean.
Mr. President, I move that we accept the House substitute.
Senator on the floor.
This bill was introduced at the request of some constituents to let them do genealogical research from their home computer. The clerks have had some concerns since the bill's inception. We made changes in the House. The substitute is a change to further mollify the clerk's concerns that the chairman of the House General Laws Committee made. My constituents are satisfied that this still will allow them to do what they wish to do. So I reiterate my motion that we accept the amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs with the House substitute.
Senate Joint Resolution 35. It's been agreed to by the House with amendments.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that we concur in the House amendment.
Senator, is the floor.
Mr. President, this is a buried crime, and that it has to do with the membership between the House and the Senate as to the study to be done. Mr. President, I changed that. I believe we should reject the House amendment because it has to do with the number of. It's written wrong up there. We should reject the House and put it House amendment because they changed the membership between the House and the Senate in terms of the commission to study this. With a recommendation that we reject, I move we concur in the House amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from Hanover. Senator, did you okay?
Our motions are always in the positive.
With the recommendation that they be rejected, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. The Senate does not concur with the House amendments.
Senate Joint Resolution 42 has been agreed to by the House with a substitute.
Senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we concur with the House substitute. I'd like to speak to that.
Thanks, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. This resolution sets up a task force to look at ways to reduce waste and help with recycling. The House substitute makes it clear that we're not looking for a technical study from DEQ so that it would not cost DEQ any money for a technical study. So I would ask the Senate to adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate concurs with the House substitute.
Senate Bill 70, the House insists on its substitute and requests a committee of conference.
Yeah. Okay. Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accede to the request for a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate accede to a request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 27, noes 13.
Ayes 27, noes 13. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conference on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Judiciary, Senator Edwards, or Senators Lucas, Peterson, and Obenshain. Senate Bill 71, the House insists on its substitute and requests a committee of conference.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accede to the House request for a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Judiciary, Senator Edwards, or Senators Lucas, Peterson, and Stewart. The Senate Bill 134. The House insists on its amendment and requests a committee of conference.
Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Mr. President, I move we accede to their request for a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 34, noes 5, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 34, noes 5, Rule 36-1. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Education and Health, Senator Lucas, or Senator Stewart, Peterson, and Hashmi. Senate Bill 142. The House insists on its substitute and requests a committee of conference.
Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accede to a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Education and Health, Senator Lucas, or Senators Donovan, Newman, and Hashmi. Senate Bill 203. The House insists on its amendment and requests a committee of conference.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate accede to the House's request for a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 25, noes 15.
Ayes 25, noes 15. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Privileges and Elections, Senator Deeds, or Senators Lucas, Barker, and Ruff. Senate Bill 225. The House insists on its amendments and requests a committee of conference.
Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I'd request we accede to their request for a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Local Government, Senator Lewis, or Senator Stewart, Hashmi, and McPike. Senate Bill 393. The House insists on its amendment and requests a committee of conference.
Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move that we accede to the House's request for a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Rehabilitation and Social Services, Senator Vivola, or Senators McPike, Lewis, and Cosgrove. Senate Bill 710. The House insists on its substitute and requests a committee of conference.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we reject the House substitute and put this into conference. No. I move that we accede to the request for a conference and put it into conference.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 14.
Ayes 26, noes 14. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Commerce and Labor, Senator Saslaw, or Senators McClellan, Saslaw, Spruill, Norman, and Vogel. Senate Bill 763, the House insists on its substitute and requests a committee of conference.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that we accede to the request for a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Finance and Appropriations, Senator Howell, or Senators Barker, Eben, and Chafin. Senate Bill 793. The House insists on its substitute and requests a committee of conference.
Senior Senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Mr. President, I move that we accede to the request for a conference.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 32, noes 8.
Ayes 32, noes 8. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Rehabilitation and Social Services, Senator Favola, or Senators McClellan, Stewart, and Saraville. Senate Bill 838. The House insists on its substitute and requests a committee of conference.
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accede to the House request for a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 23, noes 17.
Ayes 23, noes 17. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Commerce and Labor, Senator Saslaw, or Senators Eben, Spruill, and Obenshain. Senate Bill 939. The House insists on its substitute and request a committee of conference.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I would move that we accede to the request for a committee of conference.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Commerce and Labor, Senator Saslaw, or Senators Saslaw, Baker, Barker. New member. You know, we were just talking about returning cursive writing to schools. Barker and Norman. Senate Bill 1075. We are awaiting House action.
No, just keep going.
Uncontested calendar. House bills on third reading.
We just lost Saslaw.
Oh, we lost him. Really? Yeah. Right. No, uncontested calendar, House bills on third reading. The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, and apologize for being in the back. I move that all House bills on third reading on the uncontested calendar, that's pages 54 through 58, House Bill 557 through, excuse me, House Bill 1734 be advanced to their final passage in a block after the adoption of any amendments thereto. Any senator desiring to remove a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall House bills on the uncontested calendar, third reading, pages 54 through 58, House Bill 557 through House Bill 1734, be placed upon their final passage in a block after the adoption of any amendments thereto, with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
House Bill 557, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations. House Bill 1147. The committee amendments have been adopted by the Senate. House Bill 1680, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. House Bill 411, reported from the Committee on Transportation. House Bill 561, reported from the Committee on Transportation. House Bill 857, reported for the Committee on Rules. House Bill 932, reported for the Committee on General Laws and Technology. House Bill 935, reported for the Committee on General Laws and Technology.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can House Bill 935 please come out of the block?
Without objection, House Bill 935 will be removed from the block.
House Bill 991, reported for the Committee on Transportation. House Bill 1066, reported for the Committee on Transportation. House Bill 1638, reported for the Committee on Rules. House Bill 1492, reported from the Committee on Local Government with a substitute.
Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Mr. President, I move the committee substitute, move adoption of the committee substitute.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate adopts the committee substitute.
House Bill 1734, reported from the Committee on Local Government.
Question is, should the House bills pass in a block? That is all bills except for House Bill 935. All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The bills in the block pass.
Returning to page 56, House Bill 915.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Baker. If Madam Clerk says it, that's your name. Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I thought I won that election in 2011.
Recount. Senator has the floor.
He apparently is a little slow at claiming his seat. So, Mr. President, I move that the bill pass.
There's the floor.
This bill deals with the Virginia Economic Development Partnership Authority under the Commerce and Trade Secretariat. What it does is it deals with some annual reports or annual and biennial reports that are done representing what the strategic plan is for the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, and the timing of it is set so that it begins just before the biennial budget kicks in, so it's related to both the investments that we put into the budget as well as to the initiatives that are being done with the general funds that they have in their operation there. And it provides an opportunity, it provides a requirement that they target what areas they're looking at developing in terms of both types of projects that they think they can bring in terms of economic development to Virginia and the regions of the Commonwealth. And with that, I would renew the motion that the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 935? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 935 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. House Bill 935 passes.
Regular calendar, House bills on third reading. House Bill 798, a bill relating to the protection of employees from retaliatory actions by the employer. Reported for the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. The senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that House Bill 798 pass as
Senator, has the floor.
As amended. Mr. President, what this does is it, with the substitute, it has to do with the prohibited retaliatory action on the part of an employer. The retaliatory action would be when an employee claims that an employer has violated federal law, not just any law, and that the remedy would also include the employee could get attorney's fees, and it also includes class action, which is identical to Senator Sherville's Senate Bill 1043 for class action. So all that's in the bill, and with that explanation, I move the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just very briefly, we did do a little cleanup on this in the Senate Courts Committee, also known as the Senate Judiciary Committee. One of the things we did was we took out the idea of what was a good faith belief on what the law is as opposed to what the law actually is. So I think we made it a little bit more precise in that respect, and I would ask that the body pass the bill.
Senator. Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain. What purpose does Senator rise?
Well, I guess I will rise to ask the senator from Roanoke City if he would yield for a question.
Senator, yield.
I'll be glad to yield.
Senator, yield. You have the floor.
Mr. President, what I would ask is, am I correct in understanding that this bill, as it came over from the House, dealt with civil actions that individuals could bring for retaliation in connection with their employment?
Senator, has the floor.
That's correct.
Further question.
Senator, yield.
Yeah, I'll yield.
Senator, yield. You have the floor.
Am I correct in understanding also that the Courts or Judiciary Committee amended this and added a provision allowing for employees to make a class action claim against their employer for retaliatory actions?
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, I would say yes, that is correct, but it limited it to violations of federal law and not just state law or suspected violations. So that is correct.
Mr. President, further question.
Further question, Senator yields. Senator Edwards.
Yes,
Senator, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I would ask the senator whether the amendment to this provided for broader class actions aside from simply class actions involving retaliation in that employment context as well.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, you could argue that because it would have to be violation of federal law similar to the EEOC laws.
So, further question.
Senator yield.
Yes, be glad to.
Senator, has the floor.
So, do I understand that this basically does what maybe the senator from Eastern Fairfax attempted to do through his earlier plain vanilla class action bill, but uses this as a vehicle to get not just a class action for retaliation, but just a general class action law in Virginia?
Senator, the floor.
Mr. President, that is correct.
I see that the senator from Fairfax City is all blinged up and ready for the fruits of his labor in those fertile fields. So with that, I will ask the members of the body to strongly consider rejecting this significant change to jurisprudence in Virginia. It's going to have a significant impact on our business environment here in the Commonwealth. I think that this was something that, quite frankly, was a freestanding bill. It didn't survive this year. I think that there are arguments to support adopting this and arguments against it, but to tack it on this as a vehicle for advancing this procedural piece of legislation, I think, is the wrong way to go. I would urge members of the body to vote against this.
Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 798? Seeing none, question is, shall House Bill 798 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. House Bill 798 passes.
House Bill 657, a bill relating to the Comprehensive Plan Solar Facilities Review. The committee substitute has been adopted by the Senate.
Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Mr. President, move the bill pass. And speaking to the motion.
Senators, the floor.
Hopefully the fifth time will be the charm on this one, Mr. President. The substitute that was adopted in committee, Mr. President, members of the Senate, was a compromise effort by the solar industry and representatives of the Virginia Association of Counties. It allows a locality to waive the requirement for the Planning Commission to review whether a proposed solar facility is in substantial accord with the comprehensive plan. With that, I'd move that the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 657? Seeing none, the question is, shall House Bill 657 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 13, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 26, noes 13, Rule 36-1. House Bill 657 passes.
House Bill 528, a bill to direct the State Corporation Commission to determine when electric utilities should retire coal-fired or natural gas-fired electric generation facilities. Reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with amendment, and there are 3 floor amendments.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I would move that we adopt the committee amendment.
Mr. President.
For purpose, Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson rise.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
Yes.
Senator Yields, you have the floor.
I'm reading the committee amendment in the calendar. It says it strikes the language in the bill currently, notwithstanding any other provision of law, comma, and instead inserts the word the. So it takes out the first clause of the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Senator's floor. Further question?
And I also see that there's a floor amendment which does essentially the same thing.
That's going to be withdrawn.
Further question.
Senator Yields. Senator Saslaw. Yields. Yes. Senator Yields, you have the floor.
I would ask the gentleman, so if we basically add that amendment, notwithstanding any other provision of law, it would mean that if there's another law on the books, such as 56-585.1A8, which allows utilities to determine their own depreciation schedule, that by adopting this amendment, we essentially nullify the whole bill, that they would be allowed to adopt their own depreciation schedule.
Senator's the floor.
It narrows the scope of the bill considerably, and it should. I didn't like the bill to begin with, and I voted against it. But we just thought this was kind of broad. You might want to listen to the amendment offered by the senator from James City County. But anyways, again, I still would move this amendment.
Mr. President.
Further question?
Further question. I would say.
What will the senator yield?
Yes.
Senator Yields.
If the senator from James City County is withdrawing his amendment, then I'm not going to listen to that. Basically, by voting on this committee amendment, we're determining essentially the fate of the bill.
That's partially, yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Speak to the motion at the appropriate time.
That'll be now on the committee amendment. If you want to speak to the committee amendment, Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I don't sit on Commerce and Labor, and I have not been terribly active in a lot of these bills, but I got to tell you, this is one that I strongly support, and I hope you all will support it also. You all will remember in 2018 we adopted Senate Bill 966, and I was on the losing end of that. I opposed it, and one of the reasons why I opposed it was it allowed the utilities to determine their own depreciation schedule for their assets. To the best of my knowledge, they're the only major corporation that can basically determine their own depreciation schedule. As someone that owns a business and represents businesses, I will tell you that would be a very easy way to make money, because you can determine when you'll depreciate an asset. You'll do it in a year where you're making the most in profits, and you'll be able to levelize that gain and maximize the return to your shareholders. And it's a great thing, capitalism. The problem is this is a regulated monopoly. So when they determine that role of depreciation, basically what they're doing is nullifying the requirement to give refunds to their customers that will have been overcharged in the previous fiscal year or triennial year, as the case may be. So this was a very good bill by the young man from Loudoun County who's a freshman delegate. I'm highly impressed, and I think he's got a great future in his body. I really would like to see this bill carry through without being completely gutted by this committee amendment, and I ask that we reject the committee amendment and allow the bill to proceed forward in its original form. Thank you.
Senator, for what purpose, Senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise.
I really had not intended to get involved in this discussion, as it was my intention to withdraw the first floor amendment that I'd offered. What I would say to you about this is, first of all, that this amendment came out of the Commerce and Labor Committee, which reflected and considered the impact of what we were doing. And I would say that I have a little different perspective on it. First of all, I have an aversion to notwithstanding language on any bill, and have been very consistent about that, because no one has the perspective on exactly what that language means. But in this particular instance, by not accepting that first amendment that came from the Commerce and Labor Committee, all we're saying is that the law is existing as it currently does on it, and that's why the second part of the amendment remains as is, and that 56-585-1A8 deals with exactly what the senator said, but I don't think there's anything insidious about it, and it's not going to turn the current posture of electric generation on its head. So I would respectfully ask that we support what the senior senator has suggested.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise.
Speak to the amendment, Mr. President.
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to agree with my friend from Fairfax City. I would also agree with the gentleman from James City County that if you adopt this amendment, it's not going to turn electric generation on its head. That's because the law would stay as it is. And the whole point of the bill that they're attempting to amend is to give fairness back to the ratepayers. So in the infrastructure bill, you took away the ability of the SCC to review the depreciation and determine whether or not they should give refunds back to ratepayers. That's all this bill attempts to do. If you adopt the amendment, then it is to no avail. And our utilities do a fantastic job providing electricity to Virginia, and I'm one of their biggest supporters in that regard. But this body is supposed to regulate that utility. And we answer to our constituents. And when you give them special consideration for depreciating an asset that allows them to keep profits that they have not earned, it's just not fair. And I hope you all will reject this amendment and support this underlying bill.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the gentleman from James City County yield for a question?
Will the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
I would preface my question by saying that prior to looking at this research, I pulled up SB 966, which was authored by Senator Wagner in 2018, and I wasn't in this body. But I have read that legislation. I would ask the senator, does he think it's appropriate that a utility, including a regulated monopoly, be able to set its own amortization schedule? Is that an appropriate thing for a regulated monopoly to do?
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, my response to the gentleman would be this, that probably for the last 15 years that we have been going through the regulation or deregulation of the electrical generation industry, and we have passed various pieces of legislation, and I compliment the gentleman for going back and looking at the Senator Wagner bill that was passed. What this particular generator has been doing is following the law that the General Assembly passed. And so I would say, Mr. President, I do think it's appropriate because they are adhering to the law that the collective General Assembly passed, and it's very easy to sit here and be critical of what they have done if it is in a vacuum and not looking at it in the perspective is that the General Assembly, with the SEC oversight, has allowed this industry to do exactly what it's doing. You may disagree with it now, but that's what we decided at that time.
Would the gentleman yield for another question?
Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Does the gentleman have an approximate dollar value on the total amount of undepreciated assets that would be in play here?
Senator's floor.
Mr. President, I would respectfully respond to the gentleman. I do not. I do not. And I think it's a little challenging to peg it, day to day just because of the number of assets that are being taken offline. To be more parochial about it, they have had to take a coal-fired generating plant in my community offline and have been trying to replace it with nuclear-generated energy. So I think it's a little bit of a fluid issue, but no, I do not is the short answer, sir.
The gentleman yield for another question.
Further question? Senator
Yes,
Yield. Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Would the gentleman agree that in the past there used to be a biennium review, but now I think it's a triennium review of over-earnings, which would otherwise be returned to ratepayers? And I say over-earnings respectfully. That's not a bad word. It's just the way it works out. Is there not a review every 3 years of the over-earnings?
Senator's floor.
Mr. President, I would respond. An earlier reference has been made to 56585-1A8, which deals with that 3-year review of earnings, and it spells out various criteria that are considered.
Would the gentleman yield for a final question?
Senator Yield.
Mr. President, only if it is the final question.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
I would say that this is the final question. Isn't the real rub here that there's a intersection between over-earnings that a utility may have to pay and the depreciation schedule such that one public utility could eliminate having to pay all of those over-earnings back to the ratepayers by simply taking advantage of a 1-year full-time amortization of that capital equipment, thereby denying the ratepayers that credit that they would get on their monthly statement?
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, I would say in a vacuum that the gentleman is reasonably accurate. A couple of points. First of all, I would say that that generator is following the existing law that the General Assembly has previously established. Secondly, Mr. President, and of an enormous concern to me as a ratepayer, is that I don't think that there is anybody in this body, and perhaps anybody in the 140 members of the General Assembly, that has a clue to what the aggregated impact is going to be on any electrical generator in Virginia as a result of these multiple pieces of legislation that we have passed, and particularly in the area of green energy, where ratepayers are going to end up paying more. But I just don't think that we have a collective perspective on that. And so in a vacuum, I would say perhaps the gentleman is right, but looking at it in the perspective as what's gone through the General Assembly this year, I would say I don't know.
Right. I thank the gentleman, Mr. President, and when appropriate, speak briefly to the amendment.
You can do that right now, Senator.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the first to admit that I know far, far less than some of the more experienced legislators, veterans in this body, like the gentleman from James City County that was just speaking. But I did review Senator Wagner's 966, and I did review the history of this. And here's how I see things. You may remember last week we had a very vigorous and healthy debate with the senator from Russell County, Senator Chafin, on the early retirement of coal-fired equipment. What that involves is if we retire it early, and I understand that a company like Dominion is simply doing what we ask or suggest that they do, then there is going to be the real possibility of an amortization schedule that is reevaluated, recalculated. And let's be clear, Dominion Energy, which is a great corporate citizen, is doing what any company would want to do. If you could amortize a schedule and do it from 30 years, and you can do it down to 20 years or 10 years or 1 year, any business, any industry will do that all day long, as they should. They have an obligation to their shareholders. But here is the problem as I see it. There is the potential for the following to occur. We have, right now, the State Corporation Commission will determine whether or not there are any over-earnings. You remember back in 2015, there was a time where in January of 2015, where we voted to freeze that review for a number of years. And some of us, when we were in the House, voted against it. We actually didn't think that was right. In 2018, along comes Senator Wagner's bill and the GTSA SB 966, and it allows some of those over-earnings to be invested in technology or renewables. But here's what's happening now, as I see it, and I doesn't mean I'm absolutely correct, but the following could occur. The SEC could determine that there is an over-earnings of $200 million. That's not an exaggeration. In 2016, there were over-earnings of $400 million. If there are over-earnings of $200 million, that has to be repaid to the ratepayers. Everybody understands and agrees to that. But if the depreciation schedule could be constructed in a manner that you could do a one-time write-off, guess what happens to that $200 million? Phew, goes away. And it doesn't go back to the ratepayers. That's the potential that I see, and notwithstanding the fact that regulated monopolies are doing what we say to do, I think it's the bailiwick of the State Corporation Commission to determine this schedule, this depreciation schedule, and it's for that reason that I'd ask that you not undermine the guts of this legislation. I thank the body. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Does anyone else desire to speak on this?
Anybody else wish to speak about the committee amendment? Seeing none, Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, the utilities are doing exactly what we told them to do. They set, 2 years ago, they set up a schedule. Now we come in with, a bill that says, no, we changed our mind. Now we want you to come in and we want to take another look at it. My understanding is the utilities, if the amendment by the senator from James City County goes through, that it makes the effective date, because these utility companies have already done planning. They make the effective date December 31st of next year. They're fine. They can live with it forever. But we can't keep coming in here every other year changing the ground rules because somebody has a bone to pick with them or thinks, well, we made a mistake. So I would hope that the amendment does get adopted. Like I said, I didn't support it in committee because I don't believe in what we're doing is the right thing, but I will support this amendment, and if that's adopted, the James City County amendment is adopted, then I'll support the bill. Otherwise, I cannot.
What purpose, Senator from King George? Senator Stewart, rise.
Mr. President, I apologize, but I did want to speak one more time, if I may.
Senator, has the floor.
And I didn't plan to stand up, but listening to those last comments, and the gentleman from Richmond, you know, it boils down to this. The utility has an obligation to the shareholders. We have an obligation to the ratepayers. They are the folks who elect us. Regardless of whether anybody made a mistake or thinks they made a mistake in that grid transformation bill, our obligation and responsibility remains to the ratepayer. If you want to honor your responsibility and your obligation to the ratepayer, you will reject this amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Question is, shall the committee amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The committee amendment is rejected. Seeing at least 8 hands, we will have a recorded vote. Question is, shall the committee amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 16, noes 23.
Ayes 16, noes 23. The committee amendment is rejected. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, I withdraw both of the floor amendments.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, both floor amendments are withdrawn. Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd move that we waive reading of the floor amendment.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the amendment.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, it's a very simple amendment. I think we've had a thorough discussion of this bill, but it just simply removes the words coal-fired or natural gas-fired plants because I think all plants should be treated equally. I just found out last week in King George County we have a merchant coal plant that's being shut down, and certainly we don't have the difficulties that a lot of parts of Virginia have where I come from. But anytime you lose a big business, you lose jobs, and it's injurious to the local economy. And I just don't know why we have to single out natural gas or coal-fired plants in this bill. And I think all plants should be treated equally. So I hope you'll adopt this amendment.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in favor of Senator Stewart's amendment.
Senator's the floor.
I think it's a good, just to make sure this concept applies equally, and so I speak in support.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Mecklenburg? You okay? Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the floor amendment? Seeing none, the question is, shall the floor amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is adopted.
Mr. President.
Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Since we've changed this bill somewhat from what it was, could this go by for the day?
Any objection? Sounds like there is objection. We will, if the senator maintains his motion, we will have a voice vote. Question is, shall House Bill 528 go by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The motion fails. Who wants to move passage?
Mr. President.
Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
I move the bill pass. Speak to the bill.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, I won't recap all the comments that were made earlier, but I think this is a pro-ratepayer measure that corrects something that we did 2 years ago. The utilities brought that bill to us. They were the ones that brought that to us. We did not request that legislation, much like they brought the rate freeze bill to us. We did not request that legislation. So to the extent that we have elected new members to this body and we are bringing this bill back and correcting what I believe was a mistake 2 years ago, I say more power to us, and I move the bill pass.
For what purpose, the Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
Speak to the bill, Mr. President.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, I join with my colleague from Fairfax City and hope everyone will support this bill. But I also want to say this. I think the utilities do a fantastic job in my district and all across Virginia, and I don't mean this bill to disparage them in any way, shape, or form, because the others who have spoken on this floor are exactly right. This General Assembly regulates them and directs them. And I think that this bill is the appropriate direction. So I hope you all will pass it.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking briefly.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, I very much agree with the senators from Fairfax City and King George. And I just want to echo again, I don't think that there's anything wrong with us taking a policy that might be contrary to a policy that we previously adopted. That's what we do here every year. This is just one of the rare times that it's in the benefit of the ratepayer, and I hope it's something that we'll be able to do today.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 528? Seeing none, question is, shall House Bill 528 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 27, noes 13.
Ayes 27, noes 13. House Bill 528 passes.
House Bill 1116, a bill relating to political parties, notification of adoption of primary election, certification of candidates. Reporting from the Committee on Privileges and Elections, and there is a floor amendment. Substitute.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I renew my motion to adopt the floor substitute. Do I have to waive reading again? Okay, Mr. President, first of all, I move that we waive reading of the floor substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, should the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I renew my motion that we pass the floor substitute. And speaking to that motion,
Senator, has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We debated this at length yesterday. I think at least we got straight on our side as to what the bill does and what it means now. But the bill basically just says that the default method of nomination for a legislative candidate is a primary unless the state central committee picks an alternate method for all 140 seats of the legislature. That's basically what the floor sub does, and then the underlying, the rest of the bill just talks about who notifies the Department of Elections about that. That's what the bill does. Happy to take questions. We talked about it a lot. I renew my motion that it pass.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding the floor substitute?
Mr. President.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
I have an inquiry.
Of
you.
Ask away.
Mr. President, I'd be interested to know if the floor substitute is germane given the underlying bill.
The Senate will be at ease. The Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privilege of the floor will please retire to the gallery. The Senate is considering an inquiry regarding germaneness on the floor substitute regarding House Bill 1116. The Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline, made an inquiry as to whether or not the floor substitute is germane. The chair rules that the floor substitute is germane. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I renew my motion that the floor substitute pass.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is adopted. Senator from Bath, Senator Dees.
President, I move that the bill pass.
Senator, the floor.
As the bill came from the House, it was an agency bill that essentially requires certain notifications to come from the state party chair to the State Board of Elections or the Department of Elections. It was meant to correct an issue that occurred last year when there were problems in communicating the names of nominees from certain local parties to or local committees to the state. I think it still contains those changes with, but the Senator Servell substitute certainly contains a more significant change. I still move it pass.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does Senior Senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Speak to the bill.
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I voted for the substitute because the substitute makes a really bad bill just a bad bill. Look, we are really putting a huge amount of power in the hands of two people in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Democratic Party chair and the Republican Party chair. And I got to tell you, that is like way too much influence for one person to have over their entire party with this. That chairman, with this bill as it sits now, which I admit is not as bad as it used to be, can threaten all of you with a firehouse primary if you don't do what he likes or she likes. And on our side, our chairman or chairwoman, whoever it might be, can do exactly the same thing to us. I don't like the way you voted on something, so I'm giving you all conventions. I tell you, that's way too much power, way too much mischief that can happen in our electoral lives. Not just the Senate, but the House, all of us, all 140. This bill was bad from the start. It's a little better now, but it's still really bad. Folks, think about what we might do with this bill. Two people will have that much influence over every single seat in this chamber. I really hope that we will seriously consider just telling this bill goodbye. There are things we can do. I was talking to the senator from Prince William. There are things we can do to tweak this up to make our existing law better, to address the issues that the junior senator from Richmond went through and the senator from Northern Chesapeake went through. We can do those. But this bill sure isn't the answer. Please, folks, let's put this bill to rest.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline, rise?
Mr. President, speak against the bill.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, this bill is problematic. It will not just put the power in the one person's hand in each party, but it would put the power in the hands of the state central committees of each party, which is not that comforting of a thought. A few weeks ago, several members of this body eulogized Mr. Thomas, and in the eulogy they talked about back when he was party chair, and then when he was removed from party chair rather abruptly. I would suggest that if the Democratic Party of Virginia had this law on the books at that time, there would have been a very interesting slate of party methods of nomination going through all 140 seats throughout the 70s. I think that if this were into effect a few years ago in the Republican Party, we also would have had party-run methods everywhere. And I'm someone that's been nominated by both party-run method and primary. But you know what was great? Each time that decision was made by the people in my district. And I might not have always wanted it to be the exact way they did it, but it was made by actual members of the party in my area. What this bill does before you is this allows a majority of the state central committee, so it doesn't matter what people in your region of the Commonwealth think is the best method to nominate you. We're going to let people elsewhere. Our state central committee is not as big, and there are several of us that likely do not have any member of the state central committee living in our district. So there's no one in the entire district that even gets to vote on what the method of nomination will be. I very well see this being something that you'll have the parties come, and we think that they're not going to be willing to put everyone through the process because they have 2 or 3 that they're targeting. I'm confident that they would be willing to run the 140 through there, and I think this bill is a very dangerous bill. I don't think that it's properly before us, but more importantly than that, we need to reject this bill today and not send us down this path. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. For what purpose does the senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Sarvell, rise?
Speaking to the bill.
The floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, first of all, I appreciate the comments from the senior senator from Chesapeake, but I don't think he's reading the statute right. The bill, first of all, says the decision rests with the party, and Section 24.2100 defines the party as an organization of citizens which is governed by a state central committee, and so it doesn't rest the decision with the chairman of the party. It rests it with the state central committee, and it would be my expectation that the state central committee would adopt some sort of policy about this one way or the other. And I don't think it rests one person. But having said that, beyond that, I trust the state central committee more than I trust what's going on at the local level. I think there's a lot more opportunity for mischief locally if there's some local chairman who doesn't like a member and wants to appoint a legislative district chairman who is hostile to a member to choose a convention method, which is what, or a primary for that matter, whichever would be different. But I think it's much more likely a local chairman or local legislative district committee would be likely to choose a method which is a poison pill or hostile or whatever. And so from my perspective, this minimizes the risk that we will have mischief played in our process. And in general, I think these decisions are best made by lots of people, and primaries encourage participation. And the policy of the Commonwealth ought to be that we should have primaries, which I think this is what will flow if this passes. So I hope we will support the bill.
What purpose is Senator from Russell, Senator Chafin, rise?
Mr. Chairman, some of the members may know, others not, but for the past almost 30 years or so, I have enjoyed going out west, primarily to Montana, to hunt elk with a bow and arrow. And Mr. President, when you're hunting that type of magnificent animal, it's absolutely imperative that you know which way the wind's blowing. Okay, so you take these little bottles, a little squeeze bottle, and you put baby powder in it, and periodically as you walk along and as you go up the incline or down the incline, depending upon the time of day, you want to test the wind, and you squeeze that baby powder out, and it travels in a certain direction, and you do that 2 or 3 times, and you can be reassured that the elk will not scent you, because you have to get really close with bow and arrow. Now, Mr. President, we all like to think that we know which way the wind's blowing politically too, and only a fool disregards the wind and the way that the wind blows. But I can tell you, Mr. President, I've been around a few years. A few more people have been around a few more years. But the wind doesn't blow the same way all the time, Mr. President. The wind doesn't come out of the same direction every day. The wind will change. Seasons will change. Climate will change. Everything will change that we hold true and value. And we should be sure that that change is the one constant. That is the one constant that we enjoy in this world. And so, Mr. President, it is particularly dangerous for us to think that the winds will always prevail in a way that a lot of us would like to think that a primary is better for us. It is particularly dangerous for us to count on that, because I have seen times in the very recent past when that would not have been the occasion. That would not have been the very situation that we were dealing with. And so I don't have my little squeeze bottle to see which way the wind's blowing right now on this bill, Mr. President, but I hope the wind blows this bill out of this building, okay? because this bill could cause every member, every single one of us, a lot of heartache and a lot of work, Mr. President. Thank you.
Senator. For what purpose is a junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the bill, the substitute, it's been an interesting debate, and I'd like to just comment on a couple of the comments that we've heard yesterday and again today. The gentleman, the senator from Russell, made a very good point, and in the back of my mind, I am not going to forget what Senator Obenshain said yesterday, and in 4 years, I hope I don't rue the day and recall him saying, be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. I'll say the following. The only thing I disagreed with Senator Chafin about, Mr. President, is whether primary is better or convention is better. I always think when more people come into the process, it's better for the election. The more people that can participate in the election process, the better. And we all, it's a fact that the more people that will participate in a primary than they will in a convention. I wish that we could have a bill that would say it's a default to primary, period, full stop. We don't have that right now. This gets us the closest to it. But let me remind the body what happened in 2013. First of all, Senator Servell is right when he said it's not one individual, it's the State Central Committee. But in 2013, I remember the State Central Committee for the Republican Party changed, got different people on there, and they orchestrated a process where there was a convention and not a primary. And there's little doubt in a lot of folks' mind that had there been a primary and Bowling had got the nomination, Governor McAuliffe might not have been the governor. So I am not at all convinced that machinations can't come to fruition and the state central body will manipulate it. But this bill is better than what it was, and what I'm going to do off session, is to determine whether or not it will pass constitutional muster to have a default to primary. I know that Senator Servell said yesterday that his understanding was that it was unconstitutional. I'm not so sure. I'm going to vote for this measure now, but I promise you, Mr. President, I will look into it and I will come back, and if I can author a bill next year that will have a default to a primary, I'll do that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is Senator from Lynchburg, Senator Peake, rise?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, to see if the senator from Fairfax, Servell, would rise for a question.
Will Senator yield for a question?
I'll yield.
Senator yields.
Yes, the question, what issues are you referring to? What problems did we have last year or the year before that this bill is trying to fix?
Senator's floor.
Mr. President, I believe one of the issues was a certain delegate from Central Virginia whose papers got all mixed up and didn't get filed, and then he had to run as a write-in candidate. Might be one of the issues that this was probably trying to fix. But I know the chairman of P&E, I think, has some ideas too. I'll yield to him.
There were at least two races, and I would say to the gentleman, Mr. President, that there were at least two races in Virginia last year where there were problems in the communication of the nomination. And one of those problems was eventually resolved in the candidate's favor, the candidate of choice's favor, and both of these problems occurred on your side of the aisle. But one of the problems was resolved in the candidate's favor at the State Board of Elections. The other problem resulted in a write-in campaign. The purpose of the underlying bill is to make sure there is a designated source of information for the state Department of Elections, and that is the state party in the bill.
Thank you. Now, speaking to the bill, Mr. President.
Senator's the floor.
And that's what I thought, and I wanted to be clear. So, in the past 4, 6, 8, 10 years, 140 people running, sometimes just 100 for the House. Two people that I can recall in the past decade, there may have been several more, have not been able to get their paperwork in to the State Board of Elections properly. And one of the delegates who had to run as a write-in, they said there was an email which was never provided and did not even file his certificate of candidacy. That was nothing to do with the State Board of Elections or anything. That was personal candidate responsibility. The other delegate, there was an indication of an email to the wrong person, had filed his proper paperwork on his own. We do not need to change the entire system of picking our candidates and certifying them to the State Board of Elections because of two candidates made errors. And this bill, for us to take away from the party their methods and to dictate to the parties what they are going to do, and to put in the hand. It's hard enough when you have a legislative district chair. All right, I see something. We may be in good shape. I will wrap it up then. Thank you, Senator McPeak over there. It's a bad bill. Oh, McPike, excuse me. And I would ask that you vote against this bill.
That's right. That's right. The question is, shall House Bill 1116 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 14, noes 26.
Ayes 14, noes 26. House Bill 1116 fails.
House Bill.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, having voted on the prevailing side of House Bill 528, I move that the motion by which, the vote by which that bill passed be reconsidered.
I think, yes, 528 on page 59.
Yes, sir.
Question is, shall the vote by which House Bill 528 passed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that House Bill 528 go by for the day.
Without objection? There is objection. So we'll have a voice vote. Question is, shall House Bill 528 go by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Chair is uncertain. We'll have a recorded vote. Question is, shall House Bill 528 go by for the day? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 24, noes 16.
Ayes 24, noes 16. House Bill 528 will go by for the day.
House Bill 1257, a bill relating to drinking water, maximum contaminant levels, PFAS, compounds, other contaminants. Reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. May that bill go by for the day.
Without objection, House Bill 1257 will go by for the day.
House Bill 1455, a bill relating to unpaid tolls mail. Reported from the Committee on Transportation.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've discussed this with the patron, and I have a question that I want to ask him and go over a few wording issues to make sure that I can reflect this bill accurately on the floor, so I'd ask that it go by for the day.
Without objection, House Bill 1455 will go by for the day.
House Bill 1501, a bill relating to modification of spousal support. Reported from the Committee on the Judiciary.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that the bill pass.
Senators, the floor.
And by explanation, Mr. President, there's some standard spousal support guidelines that have been put in this bill. It's not unlike the child support guidelines. And I move the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. Question is, shall House Bill 1501 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. House Bill 1501 passes.
House Bill 1530, a bill relating to no-fault divorces, corroboration requirement. Reported from the Committee on the Judiciary.
Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, I move that the bill pass.
Senators, the floor.
This bill eliminates the corroboration requirement for affidavits or depositions on no-fault divorces. That's simply what it does. I reiterate my motion that it pass.
Thank you, Senator. Question is, shall House Bill 1530 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 18, noes 22.
Ayes 18, noes 22. House Bill 1530 fails.
House Bill 1537, a bill relating to war memorials for veterans. Reported from the Committee on Local Government with a substitute.
Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Mr. President, I move adoption of the committee substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass. And speaking to that motion,
Senators, the floor.
Mr. President, members of the body, House Bill 1537 is the war memorials bill that deals with the removal of war memorials. This is now, we have, in local government, we conformed it with this substitute to the form that Senator Locke's bill left this body. I will tell the body that this bill is destined for conference. I believe the House is already, we have already rejected what the House did to Senator Locke's bill, and I'm certain that they will do the same, return the favor for us on HB 1537. And so, but with that, I move that now that it's in the identical form with plenty of notice provisions and guardrails for the process of local control over these monuments, that we pass the bill.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose does the junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Kiggins, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak to the bill.
Senators, the floor.
This is, I guess I feel like this is just my last chance to speak to this bill before it gets on its final passage out of the General Assembly. There's few issues that I've, as a first-time senator, have lost sleep over this session, but this is one of them. As a little girl, I remember visiting the Vietnam Memorial with my father, who had many friends whose names were on the wall. Although Vietnam was not a popular war and was outwardly opposed by many, the wall exists today as a place of reflection and connection with those who have never returned home. I also know how I currently feel when I visit a monument that memorializes military friends who have died for our country through recent conflict or accident. Visiting evokes a connection and peace, and sometimes an anger and frustration, but allows a space for freedom of emotion and reflection. I feel sad to know that American war monuments, for some, evoke feelings of outrage and hatred. I believe all history should be studied, so it is learned from and its hard-taught lessons are not repeated. War memorials remind us of the terrible cost of war, the dreadful suffering and loss of sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, and siblings affected by war. They help educate future generations about past conflicts. They preserve a space for solemn reflection in congested areas and inspire others to create artistic treasures. Furthermore, most of our war monuments were erected not by government organizations to express official postures, but by private citizens as expressions of remembrance, pain, and patriotism. This is especially true for memorials that arose from America's deadliest war, the Civil War. Recognizing that our American history is not perfect, we should continue to give them the protection, respect, and remembrance that they and their families deserve and have so unassumingly earned. In most cases, these Civil War memorials are dedicated to deceased veterans who fought for their homeland and died or were wounded alongside their hometown friends. In summary, let us not divide the good people of Virginia any further than we already have by vilifying things associated with our precious American history. I worry this bill has the opposite effect we are trying to achieve and is divisive, not healing, and sends the wrong message to our veterans and veterans' families. I respectfully ask you to oppose House Bill 1537.
For what purpose, Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. What was divisive and not healing was the erection of monuments that were not necessarily erected immediately following the Civil War, but were erected in direct defiance of individuals who were enslaved. They were erected as symbols of hatred. They were erected as symbols of Jim Crow. They were erected as symbols of defiance. They were erected at a time when, in the 1950s, do this.
What purpose is the senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think you all are witnessing the pain that some of these monuments inflicted on Virginia's black community when they were put up. Many of them were put up right after Reconstruction as part of a lost cause narrative and a backlash to the social, economic, and political rise of the black community. Others were put up in response to the Brown versus Board as part of the massive resistance movement. If you haven't, and I tried to pull it up and couldn't do it fast enough, I invite you to read the editorial written by John Mitchell in the Richmond Afro-American when the Robert E. Lee statue on Monument Avenue was put up. It was very clear to the Richmond African American community that that was more than just honoring a soldier and a veteran and those who died during the war. It was the beginning of a narrative that was used by some to put blacks back in their place. And many of these monuments continue to cause that pain. And the decision about what to do with those monuments, whether to put them in context, whether to move them, whether to take them down, should be in the communities where those monuments are. Not here, just in Richmond. Part of what happened when this law was first amended to prohibit any monument, regardless of when it was built, from being moved, modified, or basically touched in any way. And that bill was vetoed. There was a work group that was put together. The only thing everyone as a part of that work group could agree on was that this is a very difficult but necessary conversation. If Virginia is ever going to heal from the trauma that occurred beginning 400 years ago, if we're ever going to heal like any family, we have to talk about that trauma, how it affected everyone, how it continues to affect everyone, how it continues to fester until it blows up in Charlottesville. Because when you don't talk about trauma, it doesn't go away. It simmers until it can't be held back anymore. And what that working group said was these need to be conversations in the community where people can have an honest conversation about perspectives that aren't theirs. If we don't do this now, when are we going to do it? When are we going to have that conversation, and when are we going to heal as a Commonwealth? Because I'm going to tell you what, my father, my mother, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents, and I don't know who before them, because when they were born, somebody didn't deem to put their name on a piece of paper. But everybody in my family, and Senator Sproul's family, and Senator Lucas's family, and Senator Locke's family has a story about the trauma inflicted on them solely because of the color of their skin. And these monuments, some of these monuments, trigger that trauma for every single one of us. We can't ignore that. We cannot ignore that. We need to begin the healing process, and ignoring this conversation or simply having it in the floor of the Senate or the floor of the House is not going to do it. I ask that you pass this bill.
What purpose does the senior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak against this bill.
Senator's the floor.
Mr. President, while I have such respect for many of the different opinions in this room as they look at the symbols, as they look at the statues and the monuments, it invokes different emotions for different people, and I respect that. One of the things that I appreciate about those that serve in this body is that faith does bring many of us together, regardless of race. But what I will also tell you is that symbols are just that. They are symbols. And what may mean hurt and pain to one person can mean that is someone else's grandfather or grandmother or family member. And while there was a period of time in which I will say there was a great sin that occurred, that doesn't mean that that person is only known for that one sin of slavery. That person also had many accomplishments that were good. It was a culture and a period of time which was an accepted practice, which we no longer accept as right. It was evil. But it doesn't mean that we take all of these monuments down. We remember our past and we learn from it. We don't erase it. And while I understand the sentiments and my heart breaks over the slavery that occurred many, many years ago, and I would say that everyone in this room would call that an evil and never should have been perpetuated. But you also have to remember that these people weren't just bad people. They lived in a time in which slavery was an accepted practice. They did things that were also good and noble and of good character, and therefore we should preserve them. These are grandparents. These are family members. These are brothers. These are sisters in which these memorials were erected to. We shouldn't just tear them down just because there are some in this body that just the symbol of that person evokes negative emotions. This is about tolerance. This is about an understanding and appreciation that we all have difference of opinion on what that symbol represents. And I would just remind the body that as we deal with these delicate issues, those are people. They are representatives of family members and descendants and ancestors of some of those in this body and beyond. And we need to be sensitive to that as well. We need to learn from history, not erase it and not repeat it. We need to have some type of context added or add more statutes to honor those and to remember the period in which these statues were elected. And with that, Mr. President, I would just remind the body that if we're going to be a tolerant society, we have to tolerate that this is not just an issue for your culture or your people, but for everyone. And we have to be tolerant of everyone. Thank you, Mr. President.
For what purpose is the junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I fully agree that we need to remember our history. I think we need to remember our past and the trauma of slavery and the Civil War in this country. But I don't think we need to commemorate those who led to that trauma. Commemoration and remembrance are two entirely different things. I actually teach the history of slavery and of the Civil War to college students. I teach it through the poetry of Walt Whitman, through the speeches of Abraham Lincoln, through the narratives of those who were enslaved. I teach it through the letters of those who fought in the war. Never once have I taught the history of slavery and the Confederacy through monuments that were erected during the Jim Crow era in an attempt to intimidate and to consolidate power. With that, I request that we vote in favor of this bill. Thank you.
For what purpose is Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I'm okay now.
Senator's the floor.
Okay. I think that it's okay to teach tolerance, but I don't think it's okay to teach revisionist history. And I think when I spoke about this bill in the local government committee, one of the things I talked about was my own dream of becoming the Archivist of the United States. That was my original goal, and I know some of you probably wish that I had become that instead of standing here. But for a short time prior to going into higher education, I did work as an archivist. I worked as an archivist in a state archives. And every day in that state archives, I had to walk by these monuments at the state archives. Every day, walking by these monuments. I celebrated Jefferson Davis's birthday as a state holiday. I celebrated Confederate History Month every year. I celebrated Confederate Day every month. I celebrated Robert E. Lee's birthday every year as a state holiday, being paid state wages, celebrating those days, to the point that my tolerance level evaporated and I quit the job. I quit the job and moved on to another job at an archives in Atlanta, where somehow in Atlanta history stopped for them in 1960. In Atlanta, Georgia, which was a bastion of the civil rights movement, where Martin Luther King was born, where they didn't even have anything in that institution about Martin Luther King, where they dedicated everything to Gone with the Wind, which was fictional. And you would have thought that Scarlett O'Hara was real in that institution. So I had enough of revisionist history. So my dreams of wanting to become the Archivist of the United States died in Atlanta, Georgia, where they too wanted to relive the lost cause. So I decided to finish my doctorate and go into higher ed, where I could teach about the reality of what life is really like. Several years ago, I visited Ghana and went to Elmira Castle, which was not really a castle, it was a slaveholding pen, and stood in the door of no return, looking out on the Atlantic Ocean. And as I looked out, I thought to myself that there were ships coming through, going to and from that slaveholding pen, with many Africans down in that hold who traveled the Middle Passage, some to the Caribbean, some to the shores of what would become the United States of America. And I said to myself that maybe one or two ancestors of mine may have been on one of those ships. But I also said to myself, at the very least, that ancestor survived. Not only did that ancestor survive that Middle Passage, that ancestor survived the horrors of slavery. That ancestor survived the horrors of Jim Crow. That ancestor survived the horrors of segregation. That ancestor allowed me to survive the horrors of walking by those stupid monuments that had been erected for a lost cause, so that I could stand here and say to you that those monuments and statues were not erected to talk about the reality of a history. They were erected to say to me, to Jennifer McClellan, to Lionel Spruill, and to Louise Lucas, to you, Mr. President, that your lives don't really matter to me. That you were the reason why we're erecting these, to remind you every single day that your life don't really matter to me. That you were the reason why we fought this war. And that you don't matter. But let me tell you the real reason for this bill is to give local governments an option of what they are to do about this. Not the state. That's the reason for the bill, is to give local governments the option, not us here. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in favor of the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, one of the reasons I come to this body, and one of the reasons I'm proud to be a member, and it'll be an honor I'll take with me to my grave, is to learn from my colleagues and learn from their life experiences and to learn from the speeches I've heard, and to absorb that and make that part of my life experience that I'll pass along to my children. And I apologize for speaking autobiographically, because, you know, I always think, why did I do this? You know, I spent years of my life, I wanted to be here. I wanted to be in the legislature. And And if you know my family, and I apologize for talking about my family, I'm not the first or the second person in my family to serve in this body. I'm actually the third. The original was a young man named Roswell Donahoe. He was from Loudoun County. He was the youngest of 5 brothers. And 4 of them served in the Army of Northern Virginia. 2 of them in the cavalry, 2 of them in the infantry. All 4 perished. He was raised as an orphan. He moved to the town of Fairfax. He married a local attorney's daughter, and he ended up somehow stumbling into the state senate, served for a couple terms. And he ended up having a granddaughter, Mary Walton Livingston, my grandmother, who became an ardent New Deal progressive, so to speak, and was someone who fought massive resistance and was awarded an award from the NAACP on her death, and I was there to accept it on behalf of my family as well. It was a great moment. And I say this because, not that I'm here to apologize. I have a Confederate past. I don't apologize for it. It's all part of a journey. And Roswell Donahoe grew up as an orphan. On the other side, my mother's great-grandfather was a 16-year-old enlisted in Richmond Howitzers, was blown up at Gettysburg, somehow survived and lived to father a family. But it's part of a journey, and we're going through a journey. And, you know, I listened to what my colleagues saying. You know what? I was convinced when I came down here I was going to vote against this bill. I didn't care if it cost me my seat. I said, you know what? I would rather lose my seat than sacrifice my family. My family's more important than any legislative seat. But when I listen to my colleagues, it is a process, and it's going to have to play out. And a dialogue requires both sides. And as I said, I stand on the side of those folks that come from Virginia, come from little towns like Saluda, come from little towns like Tappahannock, town of Fairfax, which at one time was a little town, and we fought for the Army in Northern Virginia. And in some cases erected statutes. You know, you might remember the floor amendment I put on to take out the cemeteries. Well, there's a monument to the 17th Virginia Infantry in the town of Fairfax Cemetery, which was dedicated in 1908. President William Howard Taft actually came out to dedicate it and met many of the Confederate veterans, one of whom was my great-grandfather. And he's buried right next to that statue. And that was important to me, and that's why I put that amendment in. But I recognize what Senator Locke says, and she's a woman of integrity. I take that to the bank. I recognize what Senator McClellan says. She's a woman of integrity. I take that to the bank. You don't need to take what I say to the bank. I just say that this is a journey. Let all people talk. We all have stories. I'm so proud of my family. And somehow, maybe 100 years from now, my descendants, if they're still around, may be proud of this moment. And we're going to move this bill forward. And I do believe that there are guardrails on this bill, that there's a community discussion that's going to take place when we remove these, if we remove these monuments, that we're coming to grips with a history. And I have my own opinions on it. But the bottom line is this is part of a journey. And we're going to take a step on this journey. And we're going to hold hands on this journey as brothers and sisters. So I do hope we move this bill forward. Thank you.
Any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 1537? Before we cast a vote on House Bill 1537, I may be called to vote on this measure myself. I want to associate myself with the comments, the eloquent comments of the senator from Hampton, Senator Locke, and I've listened to the discussion. I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the discussion here today, but I want to note a couple of things. One, as you consider your vote on this bill, my family, too, has a story. And I carry the legacy of slavery in the Commonwealth of Virginia every single day when I write my last name. My great-great-great-grandfather was freed from slavery in the Commonwealth of Virginia on June the 5th, 1798. It's a fact that I learned right before I walked out of those doors of the Capitol on Inauguration Day, 20 minutes before I was sworn in as the 41st Lieutenant Governor, the second African-American ever elected in the history of the Commonwealth of Virginia to statewide office. I carried a copy of that freedom document in my breast pocket. And so my family has lived with the trauma of slavery for generations, but has overcome it in so many ways with the help of so many people and with a gracious God. And so I hope that you understand that this is a situation that is so much deeper than a simple vote on simple war memorials. And I also hope that in this moment we will have courage, the courage of our convictions, that we will not repeat the mistakes of the past. It has been amazing and ironic and shocking, the fact that we will repeat the racist mistakes of the past with no irony and no self-awareness and no courage to speak up. And I'm hopeful that in this moment, after this vote, we will have that kind of courage. With that said, the question is, shall House Bill 1537 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 17.
Ayes 21, noes 17. House Bill 1537 passes.
House Bill 1572, a bill relating to Industrial Development Authority's Town of Front Royal, reported for the Committee on Local Government.
The senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Yes, Madam President. Sorry. Madam President, move the committee substitute. I'm sorry. Wrong bill. Madam President. Madam President, I move the bill pass, and speaking of that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Madam President, the bill simply allows the town of Front Royal to establish its own independent industrial development authority independently from the Industrial Development Authority for Warren County. Apparently, there's been a lot of controversy you may have seen with the Industrial Development Authority there. So the town of Front Royal seeks to have the authority to develop its own, and therefore I move the bill pass.
Seeing no one to speak, the question is, shall House Bill 1572 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. House Bill 1572 has passed. The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, Madam President, excuse me. Yes.
You excuse, it's been a tense day.
May I just read the title of this section? Hold on. Uncontested calendar, House bills on second reading.
Madam President, I move that all House bills on second reading on the uncontested calendars, uncontested and regular calendars, pages 61 through 81, that's House Bills 665 through 1663, that the rules be suspended and the, second constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the second reading of the titles of the House bills on uncontested and regular calendars, pages 61 through 81, House Bill 665 through House Bill 1663, be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. Bills in the block are before us.
She needs to call me.
Need to call myself.
The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I now move that all said bills, those House bills, go by for the day.
The question is, shall the House bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on third reading be passed by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Bills will go by for the day.
Memorial resolutions.
The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I move that the memorial resolutions on pages 82 through 87, that's HJR 267 through Senate Resolution 57, be considered in a block in the usual manner, waiving the reading of the resolutions thereof, with the understanding that any senator desiring to remove resolution from the block will do so after the clerk has read the title of the resolution.
The question is, shall the memorial resolutions on pages 82 through 87, that is House Joint Resolution 267 through 57, be considered in the block in the usual manner, waiving the reading of the resolutions thereof, with the understanding that any senator desiring a resolution removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the title of the resolution. All in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolutions are before us in the block. The clerk will read the titles of the memorial resolutions.
House Joint Resolution 267, celebrating the life of Rosetta Cole Gilbert. House Joint Resolution 292, celebrating the life of Virginia Flynn Bell. House Joint Resolution 298, celebrating the life of Dr. James Henry Robinson, Jr. House Joint Resolution 299, celebrating the life of Vernon Lee Gordon, Sr. House Joint Resolution 300, celebrating the life of Ashton David Mitchell III. House Joint Resolution 310, celebrating the life of the Honorable Kevin G. Miller, Sr. House Joint Resolution 311.
Madam President,
The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
we take the Kevin Miller resolution out of the block.
H.J. 310 is out of the block.
House Joint Resolution 311, celebrating the life of the Honorable Gerald L. Bliles.
The senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
I would also request that that be taken out of the block.
Out of the block. 311 is out of the block.
House Joint Resolution 312, celebrating the life of James Michael Beboat. House Joint Resolution 313, celebrating the life of Barbara Wurtzel Rabin. House Joint Resolution 314, celebrating the life of Judith P. Carter. House Joint Resolution 315, celebrating the life of Henry Lee Carter. House Joint Resolution 316, celebrating the life of John C. Byer. House Joint Resolution 336, celebrating the life of William Robert Campbell, Jr. House Joint Resolution 338, celebrating the life of Maud Ferris Robinson. House Joint Resolution 339, celebrating the life of Judith Peters Beatty. House Joint Resolution 340, celebrating the life of Catherine Logan Tugendite. House Joint Resolution 341, celebrating the life of Jean Tsukimini Mittori Revi. House Joint Resolution 355, celebrating the life of Calvin Frederick Larson. House Joint Resolution 356, celebrating the life of Sidney Buford Scott. House Joint Resolution 357,
celebrating the life of Betsy Samuelson Greer. House Joint Resolution 358, celebrating the life of Nita Jones. House Joint Resolution 359, celebrating the life of James Ronald Schroeder, DDS. House Joint Resolution 360, celebrating the life of Joan Carpenter Massey. House Joint Resolution 361, celebrating the life of Paul E. Marshall. House Joint Resolution 362, celebrating the life of Eugene A. Mason, Jr. House Joint Resolution 363, celebrating the life of Edward H. Peoples, Jr. House Joint Resolution 364, celebrating the life of Mary Patricia Moynihan Mullins. House Joint Resolution 365, celebrating the life of Alma Joyce Martin Moore. House Joint Resolution 366, celebrating the life of Mamie Littleton Goines. Senate Joint Resolution 197, celebrating the life of E. Bruce Heilman. Senate Joint Resolution 205, celebrating the life of Katherine Johnson. Senate Joint Resolution 215, celebrating the life of Charles Calvin Singleton. Senate Joint Resolution 219, celebrating the life of Herman Boone. Senate Joint Resolution 220, celebrating the life of William Riley Yost. Senate Joint Resolution 223, celebrating the life of the Honorable Albert Vickers Bryan, Jr. Senate Joint Resolution 227, celebrating the life of James N. Crumbly. Senate Joint Resolution 230, celebrating the life of Robert Allen Garland. Senate Joint Resolution 232, celebrating the life of W. Malone Schooler. Senate Joint Resolution 233, celebrating the life of James Dwight Livingston. Senate Joint Resolution 234, celebrating the life of Mary Sigillo Barrico. Senate Joint Resolution 235, celebrating the life of Cecil Fillmore Gilkerson. Senate Joint Resolution 236, celebrating the life of Sarah Rebecca Wright. Senate Joint Resolution 241, celebrating the life of French H. Moore, Jr., DDS. Senate Joint Resolution 247, celebrating the life of the Reverend Dr. Levy M. Armwood, Jr. Senate Joint Resolution 251, celebrating the life of Joe Allen Mann, Ph.D. Senate Joint Resolution 258, celebrating the life of the Honorable Charles Henry Duffy, Jr. Senate Joint Resolution 261, celebrating the life of Josephine Evans Burns. Senate Joint Resolution 262, celebrating the life of Barbara Hicks Harding. Senate Joint Resolution 263, celebrating the life of Helen Wang. Senate Joint Resolution 267, celebrating the life of Douglas William Talbot. Senate Resolution 57, celebrating the life of Leonard Rockland Bogav, MD.
The resolutions will be agreed to.
Madam President.
The senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Madam President. I would ask that HJR 312 on page 83 be taken out of the block and by for the day.
House Joint Resolution 312 on page 83 will be out of the block and by for the day. The resolutions will be agreed to in the usual manner. All in favor of agreeing to the memorial resolutions, please rise. The resolutions are agreed to.
On page 82, House Joint Resolution 310, celebrating the life of the Honorable Kevin G. Miller, Sr.
Madam President.
The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenchain.
I would ask that resolution be agreed to.
The question is, shall House Joint Resolution 310 be agreed to? In the usual manner. House Joint Resolution 310 is agreed to.
On page 82, House Joint Resolution 311, celebrating the life of the Honorable Gerald L. Beliles.
The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, we previously discussed a prior resolution and commented on that, so I would move that this be agreed to in the usual manner.
The resolution will be agreed to in the usual manner. All those in favor of agreeing to the memorial resolution, please rise. The resolution is agreed to.
Page 87, commending resolutions.
The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I move the commending resolutions on pages 87 through 99, that's HJR 212 through SR 59, be considered in the block by voice vote, waiving the reading of the resolutions, with the understanding any senator desiring to remove resolution from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the resolution.
The question is, shall the commending resolutions on pages 87 through 99, that is House Joint Resolution 212 through SR 59, be considered in the block by voice vote, waiving the reading of the resolutions with the understanding that any senator desiring a resolution removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the resolution. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The resolutions are before us in the block. The clerk will read the numbers of the resolutions.
House Joint Resolutions 212, 279, 280, 281, 282, 283, 284, 285, 286, 290, 291, 293, 295, 294, 296, 297, 301, 302, 303, 304, 305, 306, 307, 308, 309, 317, 318, 319, 320, 321, 322, 323, 324, 325, 326, 327, 328, 329, 330, 331, 332, 333, 334, 342, 343, 344, 345, 346, 347, 348, 349, 350, 351, 352, 353, 354, 367. 368, 369, Senate Joint Resolutions 140, 181, 206, 207, 208, 209, 210, 212, 213, 214, 216, 217, 218, 221, 222, 224, 228, 229, 231.
Madam President.
Senator from Roanoke, Senator Edwards.
On page 96, could we take out of the block SJR 231 and pass it by for the day?
Page 96, and that is?
SJR 231.
SJR 231 is out of the block and by for the day.
Okay. Thank you.
Senate Joint Resolutions 237, 238, 239, 240, 242, 243, 244, 245, 246, 248, 249, 250, 252, 254, 255, 256, 257, 259, 260, 264, 265, 266, 268, 269. Senate Resolutions 48, 49, 54, 55, 56, 58, 59.
Madam President.
The senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Madam President. I have three requests. I ask that HJR 306 on page 90 come out of the block and by for the day.
Page 90?
Yes, ma'am. HJR 306.
HJR 306 is out of the block and by for the day.
Second request, Madam President, would be Senate Joint Resolution 216 on page 95. I ask that that come out of the block and by for the day.
Out of the block and bye for the day. Thank you, Senator Cosgrove.
And finally, SJR 237, which is on
Page 92.
Page 96, actually.
96.
Yes, ma'am. I ask that that bill come out of the block and by for the day, just so more members can sign on to those
Okay,
resolutions.
out of the block and by for the day. Thank
Yes,
you,
ma'am.
Senator
Thank you.
Cosgrove. The question is, shall the resolutions be agreed to? All in favor of agreeing to the resolutions will say aye. Those opposed, no. The resolutions are agreed to.
So we have to go back to conference reports, but they're your conference reports. Do you want to pass them by for the day?
Turning to the conference reports, just in advance so Senator Locke would know, the conference reports are mine, so I'm going to need you to respond to them, please.
On page 19, Conference Committee Report on House Bill 1726.
This is the companion bill to, yes, there it is.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the Conference Committee report on HB 1726 be adopted. And this is the companion to Senate Bill 1038. And it just makes a number of technical corrections and clarifications. It modifies the provision that prevented use of the fund for light rail expansion to authorize the use with the locality where it currently exists. It lowers the grantor's tax rate from 15 to 6 cents per $100, and in return provides that a portion of the state recordation tax currently returned to localities for transportation, and it adds a kill switch to ensure that the new revenues are used as intended, and creates a permanent regional stakeholder group to provide advice on long-term intermodal public transit planning to the Transportation Planning Organization. Again, I move that the Conference Committee report be adopted.
The question is, shall the conference report on House Bill 1726 be agreed to? All in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 24, noes 16.
Ayes 24, noes 16. The Senate has adopted the Conference Committee report.
On page 30, Conference Committee report on Senate Bill 1038.
Page 30.
See if the House is going in at 11 to 1.
The senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the same bill with regard to the Conference Committee report just explained, so I move that we adopt a Conference Committee report.
The question is, shall the Conference Committee report on Senate Bill 1038 be adopted? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 24, noes 16.
Ayes 24, noes 16. Conference Committee report is adopted.
Oh, sorry, that's him. That's not you.
Madam President, you beat me to the punch.
I think everybody's ready to go.
I would inquire of the clerk, Madam President, does that complete the calendar for today?
Yes, sir.
I can't believe it.
2020. The Democratic caucus will meet 1/2 hour before session in Senate Room 1 in the Capitol. The Republican caucus will meet 1/2 hour before session in Senate Room 2 in the Capitol.
Now I'll call on the senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Madam President, I now move that the Senate do now adjourn until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
The question is, shall the Senate adjourn until 11 a.m. tomorrow? All in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The Senate stands adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.